Welcome into the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. We have some breaking news to get to on today's show, and on the back end, fascinating tidbit about the Los Angeles Lakers maybe pursuing Nick Nurse, who's currently the head coach of the Toronto Raptors. But Frank Vogel, the news finally made official. We've been waiting for it to come down. He has been relieved of his duties as the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN was on this last night. He said this on Twitter: Frank Vogel has coached his final game for the Lakers, a decision that's expected to be shared with him as soon as Monday, sources tell ESPN. Lakers search expected to be lengthy and expansive with no clear initial frontrunner. Chris Haynes then said this early on Monday. The Los Angeles Lakers have informed Coach Frank Vogel that he's being relieved of his duties, league sources tell ESPN. Now, there is another note that we want to get to. Rob Pelinka, head of basketball operations for Los Angeles, is set to talk to the media at 2 o'clock Central, 12 o'clock Pacific time. It's somewhat of a doomsday at Crypto.com Arena and at the facility for Los Angeles. LeBron James talked. We'll let you know what he said. The firing of Frank Vogel, Rob Pelinka, going to be asked about that and the next coaching search coming up here in just a few moments. And if anything noteworthy comes out of that press conference, we'll of course let you know right here on the channel. Now, Frank Vogel did bring the 17th championship to Los Angeles. So he did some good things in his short stint with Los Angeles. So this is what I want you to do right now. Hit that thumbs up icon and like the video to wish Frank Vogel well at his next stop, because he will have suitors to become a head coach once again in the NBA. This is also pretty interesting as well. Bill Oram of The Athletic said this: Frank Vogel, during his post-game press conference last night to round out the regular season, said, "I haven't been told shit, and I'm going to enjoy tonight's game. We'll deal with tomorrow." So the conversations and the communication from the front office to Frank Vogel seemingly hasn't been there over the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, and this year. And that quote really does embody the entire season for Los Angeles. 41 different starting lineups in 82 games certainly didn't help. The injuries didn't help. Frank Vogel can be blamed for the Lakers' struggles because the lack of in-game adjustments and some of the substitution patterns were somewhat questionable. But when you don't have a consistent lineup at your disposal, it makes it really hard as a head coach to find a groove and for also your basketball team to find an identity. And this year really just became the worst season it could have for Los Angeles, for this fan base, as well as Frank Vogel. And I don't think the front office did Vogel any favors with what they did in NBA free agency last summer when they put together literally the oldest roster in the history of the NBA. I understand them trying to maximize the prime years of LeBron James, but the roster around him lacked shooting, lacked athleticism, lacked defense, and because of that, Frank Vogel really did struggle to find a groove. So with how this year went for Los Angeles, outside looking in of the NBA playoffs, describe the Lakers season for me in one word. The one word that comes to mind for me: frustrating. But you let me know in the comment section. Love to hear your responses. Some of my big takeaways from this: how quickly things can change. During the bubble season, I thought Frank Vogel did a great job in helping lead Los Angeles to the playoffs and in the NBA championship. That final series really was dominated by LA. LeBron James was going off. Anthony Davis was playing superbly. And you think about the break that the Lakers had for an aging LeBron James to rest up, for Anthony Davis, an injury-prone player, to get some months off so that he could recharge, he could come back replenished and rejuvenated. And you saw that play out on the basketball floor as Los Angeles was able to really breeze through the Western Conference playoffs en route to that championship. That wasn't long ago, folks. I know that the coronavirus and COVID has made the last couple of years feel like multiple years combined, but 2020 is when the Lakers won the championship. And here we are in April of 2022. Frank Vogel, the head coach of that basketball team, he's out at a moment when everybody thought, when they hoisted the Larry O.B., that the Lakers were going to go on a dynastic run. Now, here on the Lakers Report and here at Chat Sports, we continue to grow to the platforms that you as the viewers use. That includes a brand new partner here at Chat Sports in Rumble. You can find more exclusive and free content on the Rumble app. You know it's a cool feature as well? You can pop up the Lakers Report, close out your phone, and still hear my beautiful pipes bring you the latest Lakers news and rumors. you have to pay for that feature on YouTube. So go to rumble.com/LakersTV and follow us on the Rumble app. And we have a little bit of a competition going on between the Lakers Report and Warriors Today, a great rivalry that we see transpire on the basketball floor as well. On Thursday, Warriors Today, north of 1,000 subscribers now. They're closing in on 1,200. Laker Nation, we have some work to do. We did pick up nearly 100 new followers on the Rumble app, 79 followers gain. Let's continue to move with some momentum. Go to rumble.com/LakersTV. Let's take down those Dub Nation frauds. As for where the Lakers could pivot to next, who is going to fill the shoes and fill that role on the bench for Los Angeles? And could it be Nick Nurse? According to Shams Charania of The Athletic, Nick Nurse among the, quote, top targets to replace Frank Vogel. Here's the problem, like the same problem that we talked about with Doc Rivers. Both of these guys are currently employed and under contract. Nick Nurse signed a multi-year extension in 2020. He's still under contract with the Raptors until 2024. Like Doc Rivers, he's in year 2 of a 5-year contract that pays him around $8 million average annual value. When it comes to Nick Nurse, I think he's one of the best coaches in the NBA. I honestly might say that he is the best coach in the NBA, ahead of a guy like Eric Spoelstra, as evidenced by everything that he's accomplished to my right. 2018-2019, he makes his head coaching debut. He knows that he has Kawhi Leonard for probably only that season alone. They win the NBA championship. Following year, after Kawhi leaves, they make it to the Eastern Conference semifinals. What I think is so impressive about Nick Nurse and why I'm so high on him, last year was a rebuilding year for Toronto. They won a grand total of 27 games. This year, they were knocking on the doorstep of a 50-win season in what was supposed to be a rebuilding year without star power and a bona fide number one, 5th place in the Eastern Conference, and they are going to give the Philadelphia 76ers fits in the first round, and Nick Nurse is going to be running laps around Doc Rivers. The pros and cons with hiring Nick Nurse: quickly proved that he belongs in the NBA with the championship in his debut season. He's developed talent really impressively, and that's a credit to him as well as Masai Ujiri. I think Toronto and Miami do the best job of developing basketball players, plug and play in their system. They're ready to rock. He navigated a tricky situation in Toronto with the whole Kawhi Leonard thing, with the whole pandemic going on, with all of the kind of regulations that they have in Toronto. It wasn't easy. Last year they had to play basketball home games in Florida before coming back north of the border this year. The cons: can he handle the extra pressure of Los Angeles? It is real. It is palpable. Frank Vogel knows all about that. He hasn't coached a player like LeBron James. And don't even tell me that Kawhi Leonard compares to LeBron James with his gravitational pull and the impact that he can have on roster building. Also, Toronto, Los Angeles, very different markets. The Los Angeles Lakers, folks, it's the most iconic brand in the NBA. 17 championships, tied with the Boston Celtics for the most titles in the history of the NBA. The atmosphere, the environment, lastly, the pressure. A lot different in LA on the West Coast as compared to Toronto. But what he's done with the Toronto Raptors, especially this year, has been outstanding. Look at how OG Anunoby has been able to develop. Look at how Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet have been able to develop over time. That is a huge credit to Masai Ujiri, who identified those players, but also Nick Nurse with implementing those guys into a system and allowing them to flourish by catering the offense and catering the system to what they do well as basketball players. So Nick Nurse this year especially, going from sub-30 wins to nearly 50 in 1 year during what was supposed to be a rebuilding year, has been a great body of work for Nick Nurse. More reporting from Shams Charania. Also expects Juwan Howard to emerge as a prime candidate. He's the Michigan head coach, former Laker, interviewed in 2019 for the gig before Vogel landed it. And what's of note is that Rob Pelinka was at Michigan playing from 88 to 93, overlap with Juwan Howard. We know about the Fab Five. A lot of people didn't know that Juwan Howard and Rob Pelinka overlapped in Los Angeles. That level of familiarity there does go a long way in a head coaching search. We talked about Juwan Howard on yesterday's show, but man, I mean, back-to-back years, Sweet 16, Elite 8, I think he's done a really good job with the Michigan Wolverines. Who do you think is the better head coach between these two guys to my right? Is it Nick Nurse? Is it Juwan Howard? Treat the comment section like a Sports Talk Radio call-in line and let me know who the better head coach is. Coming up next on the show, LeBron James had his exit interview, and he had a lot of fascinating things to say about his season, his future, as well as Russell Westbrook. We'll get to that around the corner, but first, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and today is a perfect example of why you subscribe to the Lakers Report by Chat Sports, and a big reason why we've been able to grow past 42,000 subs. The firing of Frank Vogel was made official. We have you covered with a video within minutes. We have you covered during free agency as well as the NBA draft. So either hit that red subscribe button down below or in a separate browser, let this video roll, and plug in that link at the bottom of your screen, youtube.com/LakersTV. Big takeaways from LeBron's exit interview. The common excuse, it was injuries. And that was what Anthony Davis said last week. I could not believe AD said, well, can you imagine if we had Kendrick Nunn? What we could have accomplished as a team, LeBron James going back to the injury well as well. He said this, at the end of the day, the reason why we were not very good together is because we weren't on the damn floor together. That is the number one thing. I mean, how many games did we play together? We played what? A quarter of the season together? Less than a quarter of a season. I played more games with my high school teammates in a season, and we only played 27 games. So there it is. I came here to win a championship, and I want to win more. And LeBron, look, over time, you've started to deflect a lot. In this instance, yes, injuries are a big reason for why the Lakers had the lack of success, but LeBron James individually had a fantastic season. This is what we all know about this year. We are glad that the 2021-2022 Lakers, we will never have to watch this team again. It was a clunky fit. There were a lot of injuries. There were a lot of collapses during games. And outside of LeBron James, this was a bottom 5 team, a bottom 5 roster, and they were borderline unwatchable on a night-in, night-out basis. LeBron also already looking to 2022-2023. Now, a lot is going to have to happen for the Lakers to be back into that title contention window that we witnessed back in 2020. I'm fascinated to see what the Lakers do. Russell Westbrook, base salary of $47 million this upcoming year. You can't afford to have him back from a basketball standpoint, but also just the player that he is and all of the baggage that kind of trails him. $47 million for an aging athlete who can't shoot. The game has passed him by. You have to offload yourselves of that contract. So I'm fascinated to see how the Lakers do that. Also fascinated to see who the Lakers hire as their next head coach. There are so many questions with the coaching staff, and by the way, none of the assistants have been let go, and what happens with this roster. If you want the Lakers to make a splash this offseason, hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. I mean, who isn't going to smash that like button? Because there's a lot of moves that need to be made for the Lakers to try and chase that 18th title. Another LeBron takeaway. No discussions on extensions yet. Now, we've covered this here on the channel. Wants to play with Bronny James at some point. He's going into the final year of his contract right now. And as it stands, here in the middle of April, the Lakers could offer a 2-year, $100 million contract extension on August 4th. LeBron would then be under contract through 2025. So $50 million per year for a guy who right now is already 37 years old. It's steep, but if he plays like he did this past year and you get him some more help, maybe a more ball-dominant player who can actually shoot unlike Russell Westbrook, then you might get some bang for your buck there. As for what LeBron had to say specifically about those extension talks, well, the conversation hasn't been talked about technically because of the collective bargaining agreement. Cannot even be discussed until later on in the year. I know it's out there, but we can't even, myself, Rich, can't even begin to talk about it with Rob or their front office at all because of the collective bargaining agreement. So when we get to that point, we will see. Now, if the Lakers do sign LeBron James to that contract extension, it'll send ripple effects across the entire NBA. And here on the Lakers Report, we cover the Lakers. On our main Chat Sports YouTube channel, we also cover all of the latest NBA news, rumors, free agency updates, as well as our NBA draft coverage year in, year out. The most watched NBA draft and free agency coverage in terms of the NBA on YouTube. YouTube.com/ChatSportsTV takes you to the promised land. All right, last takeaway from the LeBron exit interview. He has Russell Westbrook's back. And that's not too much of a surprise. LeBron James went to bat for Russell Westbrook. Rob Pelinka in this front office had a deal in place to bring in Buddy Hield. Instead, LeBron wanted Russ. AD wanted Russ. Lakers traded for Russ. LeBron, on the tumultuous season for Russell Westbrook, said this: "One thing about Russ that I love and will always love is just his competitive spirit. what he brings to the game every single night. And when you're in a profession, where so many injuries happen and so many things go on, to have a guy that's reliable and can put on the uniform every single night, that's something I respect out of everything. I'm not going to sit here and make decisions for the front office, but I love being teammates with Russ. LeBron putting it nicely. He knows if he's a smart basketball mind that he can't have Russell Westbrook back on the team next year. Now, he wanted Russ to begin with, as we talked about, and that goes down as a failure for LeBron James, the general manager. It didn't work. It was clear that it didn't work and wasn't going to work early on in Russell Westbrook's tenure. And what LeBron said about Russ in terms of the competitive spirit, the competitive nature, him being a dog, it's true. But also at the same time, that's also part of the downfall of Russell Westbrook, is that he doesn't have a good temperature on the game, and he can't slow it down in the guts of the game to make mentally strong decisions. Instead, he's way too reckless with the basketball. So those are all of the tidbits going down with the Los Angeles Lakers. It is a fascinating season that awaits. Who's going to be the next head coach? What happens with Russ? What happens with the rest of this roster and the future of LeBron James? We will keep you updated right here on the Lakers Report. That's why you subscribe. Use that link down below or that red subscribe button. Thanks so much for making today's show a part of your day.